So it says I'm recording. Okay, so I guess let's get started. If you guys want to interrupt me for any reason to explain something more, or if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and I will take a pause or whatever to talk about anything you guys want me to. So we're oh darn, too bad it's choppy. Well, hopefully the recording will turn out a little better. So if you guys have any trouble hearing me, maybe you can check that out later. I am on Wi-Fi, and I'm reluctant to switch. It says I have full signal, so I guess I'm just going to have to power through and hope that it clears up. If not, you guys can try the recording after. Sorry about that. Okay, so today we're here to talk about Islandora, obviously, and how to do Drupal Blocks integration and kind of some of the stuff we did on a recent project to improve that situation for Islandora. So I always start my presentations with a little about me. So I am Luke Bainbridge. I am a development lead at Digital Echidna in London, Ontario, Canada, which is where I am today. I have 4 years experience doing Drupal and about a year's experience doing Islandora and stuff. And I'm a back-end developer with a background in computer science. And this is my dog, Elliot. You guys might recognize this slide from my last presentation if you were here. So what are we going to be talking about today? I'm going to go over a few main topics before we dive into the meat and bones of this, but I'm going to talk about Islandora Templates. I'm going to talk about Drupal Blocks just to make sure we're all on the same page, and then I'm going to talk about the problem we had and how we could have solved it, and what solution we picked, and then I'll go through some examples with you guys. So it might be a little bit briefer than the XACML talk I gave last week if you were here, but then we'll have more room for questions if you guys have any. So our first topic today is going to be Islandora Templates, which are really just Drupal templates. Nothing special about them, except for maybe the way that they display their data. So what is a template? Well, very simply, Drupal 6 and 7 use flat PHP to build their templates. Essentially, as Drupal runs, it passes variables to the template, and the template renders them for display in HTML. So it wraps them in all the divs and classes and stuff you need to display them. And a template can be overridden for customization, which comes in handy when you're building a website using existing modules and stuff that provide templates. You can just override them, do your own thing. How does Islandora use templates? So Islandora, most C models that come with Islandora or that are customized, they ship with custom templates. And different templates kind of display different things. There is a little bit of flexibility, but it's really up to the solution pack developer to include things like citations, metadata displays, data stream lists, whatever they think is relevant for their solution pack or their viewer or whatever they're displaying in their template. So what does a template look like? Well, this is a template. I ripped this right out of the basic image solution pack. And I just want to highlight a couple things here. So as obviously my code highlighter doesn't like PHP too much, but we can see here that we essentially have a div wrapper around most of the meat and bones of what this solution pack is providing, the Islandora content, and it's already rendered it somewhere else in a pre-process, and this template is just kind of wrapping it and displaying it for the end user. The stuff that becomes a little more problematic is down here we have parent collections and we have metadata. So essentially we're relying on the template that shipped with the basic image to display information that came with Islandora. So Islandora is the one that can display metadata, and Islandora can display parent collections. It's the one that has that data. All objects should have some of that data. So right now we're in this weird gray area where suddenly we're relying on the basic image solution pack to display that data for us. So some of the pros and cons of this approach are you can override the templates if you need to kind of do whatever you want, but that's mostly for developers. So the cons become that site builders, anyone who can use the UI to do anything in Drupal, are kind of locked out of this approach. they're going to rely on their developers to make customizations of that stuff. And it relies on solution pack developers to just provide the right stuff out of the box if you're not savvy enough to be able to override your templates, which can be problematic. So my next topic is Drupal Blocks. Just to make sure everybody's on the same page, we're going to quickly go over what are Drupal Blocks. To boil it down to its simplest level, they're contributed or custom HTML that can be placed in different regions using the UI. Now, how that HTML gets generated and stuff is all back-end Drupal stuff, but it's not that important. What's important to this presentation is the fact that they can be placed, and there's tons of different conditions that you can use to determine when a block is shown, where it's shown. You can kind of play around with that type of stuff a lot through the UI, which is one of the main reasons blocks are so powerful. Most of Drupal, though, is displayed using blocks. You might not even realize it, but the main page content is a block that is placed there by default. There's also things like user login blocks. There's you can blockify your site using a module called Blockify, and then your breadcrumbs, your page title, your action bar all become blocks, which is kind of cool. Especially if you want to give more power to your site builders to be able to change stuff around without having to go in and do development. So pros and cons of just blocks in general, they're really easy to configure, and there's lots of configuration options. So those are two big pros. But a con in this context for Islandora anyways is there's not a lot of Islandora options. There's lots of Islandora blocks, but there's not a lot of ways to customize when they should show up in an Islandora context, say on certain C models and stuff. So, and also an unlisted con is that giving site builders this kind of power, it can sometimes be dangerous, but oftentimes it takes some of the stress off of developers and some of that workload. So now that we're all on the same page about kind of what an Islandora template is and what it does, what it provides, and what Drupal blocks are, I'm going to talk a bit about the problem that we faced. So the problem that we faced, as always, came from some requirements. Various C models would require citations to be shown, and there are C models that do this by default in the Islandora Scholar Solution Pack, I think. They wanted the data stream information, but only for specific roles on different C models, and the client would also want to move the parent collections block into the sidebar. That actually might have been our requirement too, based on designs. But essentially what we have here is three things that are provided by Islandora Templates. So Islandora's capabilities, if we were to just use Islandora, we'd need to repeat a lot of this code in template overrides. So different C models showing different like metadata or showing different things would require us to override the templates a lot and then copy and paste the same code into different templates to make sure we're being consistent. Post-launch, we would definitely need to maintain these templates and stuff because they wouldn't be as straightforward anymore. And site builders and power users would essentially be helpless to customize this work, other than using things like Solar metadata and stuff like that. But we wanted a little more. So Drupal's capabilities. So when we're talking about Drupal in a node context, and I often use nodes as analog to objects to explain Drupal to, or to explain Islandora to people who do Drupal, but Drupal has a lot of options for nodes when you're doing block placement. So you can place blocks that only show up on certain node types. You can place blocks that only show up when a certain role is viewing the page. So it makes a lot of this stuff pretty straightforward in the UI. There's lots of supplementary blocks that need context. So like if you're building views and they need a node ID, you can use that context from a page to build an entirely new block, which is kind of cool. And site builders can update blocks placements and like maintain blocks post-launch, so they can update their conditions and stuff to kind of meet their own needs, which is very handy. But Islandora does not have C model options or blocks for anything we need. So that's my my face when I'm trying to think about what we're going to do here. So we're back to square one. We thought about it. We came up with some solutions. I'm going to go over three different ones here that we had considered before I go over the ones that we actually settled on. So the first solution we thought about was to continue using template overrides. That's the most obvious one. That's typically what you would do in the Islandora space. It's not necessarily that hard, just sort of requires us to copy paste a bunch of code. Whatever, it's not that bad. But site builders cannot really be helpful in this situation unless they've got some development background, and we would need to maintain this. And also revisions can become time consuming in this case, because if, say, we suddenly want to remove a C model from where, like, the display for a certain block, we need to go in and actually modify the template rather than just doing some configuration in the UI. So that was one of our solutions. Another one of our solutions was to create custom blocks just for the Canadian Writing Research Collaboratory, which is the client in this case. Pro blocks are placeable, so you can place them in different regions and stuff. But a con in this scenario was that the logic for roles and C models would be hard-coded into the block. So again, you lose some of that configuration. And then it's not extensible to new C models in the future, which is something we were pretty cognizant of, that this is supposed to be a living project that continues. So we're going to want to be able to do other C models in the future with these same blocks. So that didn't seem like the best solution either. So our final solution was to create Islandora info blocks and placement options. So essentially what we thought might be easiest was to actually take this extra information that other various C models are providing and actually take it out of the template and then make blocks that provide it to build it back up. So the pros for this is it provides a huge amount of flexibility. The code is contributable, which I'll show you guys where the code lives, and you can take a look later yourselves if you want. It's very easy to train site builders to do this type of work. So even like power users and stuff, once the site is launched, you can give them the ability to change some of this stuff, which is very handy. And there's tons of examples of how to build stuff like this in the Drupal sphere, because in Drupal we do this a lot. We end up writing a lot of blocks. But of course, we would have to develop these two modules, and it would still require template modifications. So kind of, like, we weren't quite sure if this was the way we should go, but in the end, we kind of decided on it because of all the flexibility it provided. So what solution did we pick? Well, I just gave it away. We built the two modules here. So these two modules that we ended up building provided all of the functionality that I just described, where you can display certain blocks, and you can also have some Islandora options around them. So the two modules are Islandora Blocks and Islandora Block Options. So the first module, Islandora Blocks, provides blocks with supplementary information for objects. Now, what I'm talking about here is I identified three main ones and one kind of secondary one that we could work with. The three main ones were object metadata, object data streams, and object collections. Most objects in your Fedora repository are going to be able to get this information and have this information. So the object metadata is just your default metadata display. So you can wipe that out of your template and then just be able to configure it using a block. Your object data streams lists all of the data streams available to the current user. So that user so anything they have access to, they should be able to see there and download from the view. Object collections is the parent collection of the object, or collections as we know they can point to two. And then CSL is just a citation. And you can select which citation you're using if you have the CSL module installed. That's the only time it shows up. And it allows you to kind of just like show a citation for relevant content. So that was the first one that we tackled. The second one was to give us more power when we were configuring where blocks should show up. So we made a module called Islandora Block Options. And essentially what this one does is adds new configuration options for blocks that allow you to filter when it displays based on the C model that you're looking at. Which is really kind of cool because it allows you to do things like only show data streams for image content model when they're anonymous, stuff like that. So you can kind of have more control over when your blocks are showing up and for what type of user, what their role is within the repository. And you can also do stuff like, even on normal Drupal blocks, you could create a custom help block that only shows up on certain C models to essentially walk people through what they're looking at, stuff like that. So it kind of gives more power to the site builders to do a little more with their Islandora installation. So now that I've kind of talked about what these modules are, I'm going to walk through a couple of examples here. So I'm going to switch to this site here. So this is what we're looking at here is a pretty vanilla Islandora install that I've done. And I used this last week, so it'll look familiar to anyone who attended last week's webinar. But essentially, I've just got a pretty vanilla looking repository here with a picture of my dog in it. So essentially what I'd like to do is when I'm on this page, I would like to be able to say, show this in collections in the sidebar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install my modules here. Bear with me for a moment. If I go down to the bottom, I have Islandora block options and I have Islandora info blocks. So let's turn those on. These will provide me with the functionality I need. So if I go to blocks now, what I'm going to see, if I scroll down to the disabled blocks, is I now have object citation, object collections, object data streams, and object metadata. So if I wanted to show this in the primary sidebar, I would place it. So these are all my regions in my theme. So now I have object collections in the primary, which is the sidebar. So let's go to the bottom here and save it. And then if I head back to my repository, I should start seeing is, well, we don't see anything on this level because there is no parent, so that's pretty obvious. Oh, but there's the parent collection, and there's the parent collection for Elliot, so we can see that that worked out. But what if I don't really care about the parent collection on a collection object? Well, let's configure the view. So now I'm looking at the actual configuration screen for this block, and if I go down, I've got a new tab here for Islandora C models. What this allows me to do is show the block based on which C model I'm looking at. So I only want to show it on the basic image content model so that I only see it when I'm looking at Elliot. Okay, so we can see that it worked. It's gone from this view, but now it still shows up in this view. So the other ones that I have here, the other blocks, just as a quick demo, the other one that I can show you in this installation is the metadata block. Let's put that right in the content region. So I've got the content region. There's my main page content. I talked about that before, and I'm just going to have metadata show up underneath the main page content. So now when I go back to my repository, I can see every object has metadata, and it shows up at the bottom. So this is something that the basic image, or that the collection solution pack didn't provide out of the box, but that we can now do using Islandora blocks. And we can also do the same thing if we think this is irrelevant for collections. We can just go in and, or maybe we say it's only relevant for collections, just for argument's sake. So now, I still see it on my collection. I should still see it on this one too, but I will not see it on Elliot's. Elliot does not have any metadata, or he does, but we're just not seeing it. So that's kind of an example of what you can do with these two modules, and hopefully it gives you guys a good idea of how powerful they are. I can also show you, so this is the beta site for CWRC, and this one actually has all of the blocks on the page. That's why I chose it. It's just a basic image, but it has the parent collection in the sidebar. We have a citation here that was generated using the CSL module because this has a mods data stream. We have all of our metadata showing up down here. And since I'm an anonymous user, we also see the data streams and they show up down here. So kind of gives you an idea of what you can do with these things. So that all said, I'm going to switch back to my presentation slide here, if I can. So we've gone through some examples. So I'm going to open it up now for questions, comments. Feel free to use the chat, or if you're feeling adventurous, you can unmute and try and talk to me. I'm not sure if I'll hear it. I've got my audio up though. Quiet group today. Question. All right, go for it. Context module. Yes, the context module is something we use quite often to display and hide different blocks based on pages and stuff. But I'm not sure. Is there integration with the context module with Islandora? I don't know. But if it is the context module, yeah, so essentially we would need to do half the same thing. If there was no integration, we'd need to provide it. So yeah, probably not the most ideal one. And also context can be a little confusing for people that, for site builders and stuff when we want to hand this off. So we did consider it though. I mean, we use OG context a lot. So like the organic groups context. So it's something we're familiar with. It's just, it's mostly for developers still, even though there's a lot of stuff, a lot of configuration options. So just Francesca had a question there. Will your company remain the maintainer? Yeah, as far as we can. I mean, it's open to everyone to contribute. It is both of these are open source on GitHub. So as much as we can, we will be contributing patches and stuff and addressing issues. But I mean, it's open to anyone. So if there's an issue, anyone can submit a PR. As much as like we depend on these modules now for solutions that we build. So I'm sure as we keep building stuff, we'll keep addressing bugs and making them better. I can think of a few other types of blocks that would be ideal to go into the solution. So I was thinking about ways we could do that as well. Awesome. Any questions from anybody else? All right, well, works with multi-sites. Everything technically works with multi-sites. It's just a matter of making sure that you put the modules in the right place. But yeah, it shouldn't have any problems working with multi-sites. If you put it in the sites all folder, all multi-sites should have access to use the module and stuff, just like a typical Drupal module. It just wouldn't show on any of the multi-sites until you install it on that specific one. And each multi-site would have to configure them all separately because the configuration doesn't travel between multi-sites, just the actual code would travel between them. Awesome. Yes, Jeff, of course. So Simon asked if I recorded the organic groups one. Unfortunately, I did not. That was our first ever webinar, so we're still learning as we go. I'm recording this one, so hopefully I'll get it up and on YouTube soon so you guys can take a look. What I am going to do is post the slide deck from the organic groups one, and also when we open source the code, I will post that as well. Right now, the code is still living in a private repository, but it will be open source soon. Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, if everyone's, there's no more questions, I think we can end a little early. I hope you guys learned something. And yeah, if you want to contact me or whatever, I think you all have my email address now. So thanks again for everyone coming today. Bye now.